Maya Johnson dragged her mop across the chipped linoleum of Jefferson High's deserted hallways, the echo of her slow, deliberate steps swallowed by the pre-dawn silence. The air reeked of bleach and despair, a stench that had burrowed into her skin after 20 years of scrubbing this godforsaken place clean. Her hands, gnarled and rough as tree bark, clutched the splintered handle, each push a quiet rebellion against a body that screamed for rest. At 67, her back was a battlefield of knots, her knees a chorus of groans, but she pressed on. Quitting wasn't an option, not with her 16-year-old grandchild, Jordan, navigating these same halls, their dreams dangling like a fragile thread in a storm. She stopped by the trophy case, her reflection staring back from the smudged glass. Deep lines carved her face, a roadmap of survival etched by decades of grit and grief. Her gray hair, yanked into a severe bun, framed eyes that burned with a quiet fury, eyes that had witnessed a world too stubborn to shed its ugly skin. Her gaze snagged on a photo of Jordan's debate team, a small triumph tucked in the corner. A pang twisted her gut. They don't know the half of it, she thought bitterly, the blood and sweat it took to plant that seed. Jordan was her lifeline, her redemption, a chance to claw back something the world had stolen from her long ago. But this morning, the weight of that world crushed harder than ever. As she hauled her bucket to the next stretch of floor, her mind churned with last night's memory. Jordan had stormed in, eyes blazing, their voice a jagged edge. They think I'm a fraud, Grandma. Advanced math. They say I'm out of my league. Maya had pulled them close, her whisper fierce, you're in any damn league you choose. Hollow words, though, she knew it. Belonging wasn't a gift, it was a war, and for folks like them, every day was a fresh skirmish in the trenches. The sharp click-clack of heels shattered her reverie. Mrs. Hargrove, the history teacher with a permanent sneer, swept by, her perfume a cloying cloud of entitlement. Still at it, Maya, she drawled, eyes glued to her phone. Jesus, you'd think you'd have moved on by now, found something worth a damn. Maya's fingers tightened around the mop, knuckles whitening. She plastered on a smile, thin and brittle as cracked ice. Morning, ma'am. Just keeping it nice for the kids. Hargrove's laugh sliced the air, a razor dipped in venom. Well, someone's got to play maid, right? She strutted off, leaving Maya choking on the fumes of her disdain. Fucking bitch, Maya muttered, the curse slipping out like a hiss of steam. She hated that flare of rage, hated how it clawed at her chest, but sometimes it was the only spark keeping her upright. She sucked in a shaky breath, steadying the tremor in her hands. Anger was a double-edged blade, she'd learned to wield it carefully. Couldn't let it cut too deep, not with Jordan's eyes on her, not with their future teetering on the edge. Kids started trickling in, their laughter a careless cacophony bouncing off the lockers. They flowed around her like water around a rock, oblivious to the woman in the faded blue uniform. Then came the jab, a voice, smug and loud, slicing through the din, yo, Jordan's granny still cleaning shitters. Figures, lowlife runs in the blood. The word slammed into her like a fist. Her mop froze, mid-swipe, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Tears stung, hot and unwanted, but she blinked them back, jaw locked tight. Bastards, she thought, the venom bubbling up. She straightened, spine rigid as iron, refusing to let them see her flinch. Inside, though, the wound gaped raw and bloody. They don't get it, she told herself, the price of standing here. But they didn't need to get it, they just needed to feel superior, and she was their punching bag. In the shadowed quiet of an empty classroom, she wrung out the mop, hands shaking. The dam broke then, just for a moment, grief, fury, the weight of a lifetime swallowing her pride. But Jordan's face flashed in her mind, their stubborn grin, their quiet strength. Maya's resolve snapped back, hard as a whip. She might be a janitor, a nobody to these assholes, but she was a goddamn fortress for that kid. Not today, you sons of bitches, she growled under her breath, swiping the mop with a ferocity that dared the world to test her. She didn't know it yet, but the real fight was looming, and this time, she'd be ready to swing. The afternoon sun blazed through Jefferson High's grimy windows, turning Mr. Anderson's advanced calculus class into a sweat-soaked hellhole. Maya Johnson shuffled in, her mop sloshing in a bucket that reeked of bleach and broken dreams. She kept her head down, her gray bun tight against her skull, trying to vanish into the hum of equations and chalk dust. The kids scribbled furiously, their pencils scratching like rats in a wall, while Anderson strutted at the front, his silver hair gleaming like some smug-ass crown. He'd always been a prick. Last month, he'd kicked over her trash can just to watch her scramble, smirking as Jordan peeked from the hall, cheeks burning with shame. Today, though, the air crackled with something uglier. She bent to swipe a wad of gum off the floor when Anderson's voice cut through, sharp as a switchblade. "Hey, Maya. Quit lurking back there, think you can handle this?" He snatched a piece of chalk and flung it at her feet, the clatter echoing like a gunshot. It skidded to a stop by her worn-out sneakers, a taunt wrapped in white dust. The class exploded in laughter, a vicious wave that slammed into her chest. Her eyes darted up, and there was Jordan, slipping in late, his backpack slung low, his face a mask of dread as he caught the scene. Not again, she thought, her stomach twisting into a knot of raw panic. Anderson crossed his arms, his grin a slash of malice. "Solve this, janitor, let's see if you're more than a broom-pushing nobody." The problem loomed on the board, a tangle of derivatives and integrals that looked like a goddamn nightmare stitched together by a madman. The kids howled, some asshole in the back yelling, "She can't even spell math." Maya's hands shook, the mop handle slick with sweat. Jordan's gaze locked on hers, wide and pleading, "Don't let them win, Grandma," and it hit her like a freight train, this wasn't just about her anymore. "Fine, you bastard," she muttered under her breath, snatching the chalk with a fury that surprised even her. Her knees creaked as she marched to the board, the room's laughter swelling into a suffocating roar. She gripped the chalk so hard it nearly snapped, her arthritic fingers screaming in protest. The first stroke wobbled, shit, she hadn't touched this crap in decades. Numbers blurred, her mind a fog of rust and rage. She scratched out a line, then another, but it was a mess, a fucking train wreck of wrong turns. Anderson pounced, his voice dripping venom. "I knew it, back to the broom, you old hag." The class cackled, a hyena pack scenting blood, and Jordan's gasp sliced through her like a blade. Her vision swam, tears prickling hot and furious. "I'm done," she thought, the chalk trembling in her fist. She could feel Jordan's hope crumbling, could see the ghosts of every racist prick who'd ever crushed her, Columbia's sneering dean, the kids who'd spat on her lunch tray, dancing in Anderson's smug eyes. The room spun, a carousel of humiliation, and for one gut-wrenching second, she almost bolted. But then, fuck this. A spark flared, deep and primal, a scream from the girl she'd buried 30 years ago. She swiped the board clean with a savage slash, chalk dust exploding like a storm cloud, and started over. Her hand moved like lightning now, each stroke a thunderclap of defiance. The equations unraveled in her mind, sharp and alive, as if they'd been clawing to break free all this time. She slashed through the problem, her breath ragged, her heart pounding like a war drum. The laughter choked off, replaced by a stunned hush. Holy shit, she was doing it. Anderson's smirk melted into a slack-jawed gape, his eyes bugging out like he'd seen a ghost. Maya finished with a flourish, the final answer a blazing beacon of triumph, and spun to face him, chalk dust coating her like war paint. Jordan's sob broke the silence, a raw, proud sound that damn near shattered her. She didn't say a word, just stared Anderson down, her chest heaving, daring him to open his mouth. The room hung on a razor's edge, every kid frozen, every breath held. Maya's mind roared with a single thought, "I'm not your punching bag anymore, you son of a bitch." She'd drawn a line in the sand, and hell itself couldn't drag her back across it. The fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of pissed-off hornets in Jefferson High's math wing, casting a sickly glow over the stunned faces of Mr. Anderson's class. Maya Johnson stood at the blackboard, chalk dust swirling around her like a goddamn halo, her final answer blazing in white against the dark slate. The room was a tomb, silent, suffocating, every kid's jaw hanging loose as if she'd just pulled a rabbit out of a hat made of miracles. Her chest heaved, her pulse a jackhammer in her ears, but it wasn't triumph lighting her up inside. It was a storm, a fucking hurricane of memory clawing its way out of the grave she'd buried it in decades ago. She dropped the chalk, the clatter a gunshot in the stillness, and her eyes locked on Jordan's tear-streaked face in the doorway. His pride was a lifeline, but it couldn't stop the flood crashing through her skull. They don't know, she thought, her gut twisting like a wrung-out rag. They don't know what this cost me. Anderson's smug ass was still frozen, his silver hair limp with sweat, his sneer replaced by a look of dumbstruck horror. The kids whispered now, a rising tide of, "What the fuck," and, "No way," rippling through the rows. Maya's knees wobbled, her arthritis screaming, but she stood tall, a battered oak refusing to snap. It started with a murmur from the back, some punk in a Letterman jacket, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. How the hell does a janitor do that? The question hit her like a slap, and before she could stop it, the dam broke. Her mind reeled back to 1963, Columbia University, where she'd been a math prodigy with stars in her eyes and fire in her veins. She'd aced every test, her notebooks a symphony of equations that made professors blink twice, until Dean Hargrove, a racist bastard with a cigar-stink grin, decided she didn't belong. "You're a cheat, girl," he'd snarled, slamming her scholarship rejection on his desk. "Your kind don't cut it here, go scrub floors where you fit." The accusation was bullshit, a lie cooked up to crush her, but it stuck like tar. She'd fought, oh God, she'd fought, tears streaming as she begged for proof, but the board didn't care. They saw her skin, not her soul, and kicked her to the curb. Maya's breath hitched now, the memory a knife twisting in her ribs. She'd stood at Columbia's gates that last day, 20 years old, her dreams bleeding out on the pavement. Her parents, her sweet, worn-out folks who'd scrubbed floors themselves to send her there, had sobbed when she came home empty-handed. "I'll go back," she'd promised, voice raw, fists clenched. But life didn't give a shit about promises. Bills piled up, her dad's lungs gave out from factory fumes, and she traded her pencil for a mop. Every stroke she'd scrubbed since was a scream swallowed, a piece of her genius locked in a cage of silence. Back in the classroom, the whispers grew louder, a buzzing swarm. "She's gotta be some kind of freak," a girl hissed, and Maya's head snapped up, eyes blazing. Freak. The word was a match to gasoline. She wanted to roar, to grab that little shit by the collar and yell, "I was a fucking star, you brat, I burned brighter than you'll ever dream." But Jordan's gaze held her back, his quiet strength a tether. She swallowed the rage, her throat tight as a noose, and turned to Anderson instead. "You wanted a show," she rasped, voice low and lethal, "you got one." He flinched, his face a mask of pale panic, but she didn't care. The kids were piecing it together now, Jordan's choked whisper cutting through, "Grandma, you were a mathematician." The awe in his voice was a bomb, but it couldn't heal the gash splitting her open. She nodded, slow and heavy, her eyes drifting to the board. "Yeah, kid," she thought, "and they fucking stole it from me." The truth hung there, raw and jagged, she wasn't just a janitor who'd pulled off a stunt. She was a phoenix, burned to ash by prejudice, rising now in a blaze of defiance they couldn't ignore. Her hands balled into fists, nails biting her palms. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The past had claws, and it was tearing her apart, but she'd be damned if she let it win again. "Not today, you sons of bitches," she vowed silently, her resolve a steel rod in her spine. She'd buried her brilliance once. Now, it was awake, and it was pissed. The air in Jefferson High's cafeteria hung thick with the stench of burnt pizza and teenage sweat, but for Maya Johnson, it was the weight of eyes that choked her. Days had passed since she'd turned Mr. Anderson's smug little math class into a fucking battlefield, her chalk slashing through his bullshit problem like a blade through flesh. Word had spread like wildfire. Kids who'd once stepped over her mop without a glance now whispered her name in the halls, their voices a mix of awe and unease. "Holy shit, the janitor's a genius," they'd mutter, and she'd catch Jordan grinning like he'd won the lottery, his chest puffed with pride. It should have felt good, damn it, it should have been a victory lap. But Maya's gut churned with something darker, a gnawing dread that this wasn't the end, just the spark before the explosion. She hauled a trash bag toward the dumpster, her arms aching under the weight, when the shift hit her like a punch. A sophomore with braces, some kid who'd once flicked gum at her, stopped dead in his tracks, his buddies nudging him. "Yo, Mrs. Johnson, that was badass," he stammered, eyes wide as saucers. She froze, the bag slipping in her grip, her heart thudding like a war drum. Badass? The word rattled in her skull, foreign and heavy. She forced a nod, her lips tight, and kept moving, but the stares followed, tentative, curious, some even warm. By lunch, a trio of girls waved her over, giggling, "Can you tutor us?" Maya's throat closed up, the mop handle her only anchor. What the fuck is happening? She thought, panic clawing at her chest. She wasn't ready for this, not for their respect, not for their goddamn light. But the tide turned ugly fast. That evening, as shadows stretched long across the empty cafeteria, Mr. Anderson loomed in her path, his silver hair glinting like a predator's teeth. He'd been a ghost since her triumph, slinking around with his tail between his legs, but now his eyes burned with something feral. "You think you're hot shit now, huh?" he growled, stepping close enough for her to smell the whiskey on his breath. "Wiping that board doesn't make you anything, you're still a fucking nobody." His words were a sledgehammer, smashing through the fragile shell she'd built. Her hands shook, the broom clattering to the floor, and for a split second, she was back at Columbia, Dean Hargrove's sneer echoing in her ears, "Your kind don't belong." She stumbled back, her breath ragged, but the fire in her gut flared hotter than his hate. "I've never been nothing, you prick," she spat, her voice a low, lethal hiss. "You're just too blind to see past your own ass." Anderson's face twisted, a snarl curling his lips, and he lunged, grabbing her arm with a grip that bruised. "Watch yourself, janitor," he snarled, "or I'll make sure you regret this." Fear spiked, sharp and cold, but she wrenched free, her glare a dagger. "Try me, motherfucker," she shot back, her heart pounding so hard she thought it'd burst. He stormed off, his footsteps a thunderclap, leaving her trembling in the dim light. The next morning, Anderson was a different man. He found her in the janitor's closet, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice a broken whisper. "I've been a goddamn fool, Maya," he said, head bowed like a whipped dog. "Forgive me, I was wrong, so fucking wrong." The apology hit her like a freight train, raw and jagged, and she stood there, stunned, her chest tight with a storm of rage and relief. She didn't trust it, not yet, but his shame was real, a crack in the wall she'd battered down. "Keep your sorry," she rasped, her voice steady despite the quake inside. "Just don't ever pull that shit again." Kids started nodding at her in the halls, their "Hey, Mrs. J," a quiet chorus that drowned out the echoes of Anderson's venom. Jordan hugged her that night, fierce and wordless, and she felt the shift, a fragile, flickering hope. But the slurs scrawled on her locker the next day, "Freak," in red marker, cut deep, a reminder that respect was a war, not a win. Bastards, she thought, scrubbing it off with a fury that shook her bones. She'd cracked their world open, but the fight was far from over, and she'd be damned if she let them drag her back down. The halls of Jefferson High buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest, the air thick with whispers and the sharp tang of teenage rebellion. Maya Johnson dragged her mop through the chaos, her gray bun plastered with sweat, her bones aching from a week that felt like a goddamn war zone. Ever since she'd turned Mr. Anderson's math class into her personal battleground, the school had flipped upside down. Kids who'd once sneered now slapped her back with, "You're the shit, Mrs. J," and a petition to name the math wing after her was gaining steam. Jordan had shown her the crumpled paper, his grin wide enough to split his face. She'd grunted, "Don't get cocky, kid, but inside, her heart thumped with a pride she hadn't felt since Columbia's gates slammed shut. The shift was electric. Teachers nodded at her in the lounge, their coffee cups trembling like they'd seen a ghost, and a sophomore had even taped a "Maya Rules" sign to her locker. But the glow dimmed fast. That night, as she locked up the janitor's closet, a crash shattered the silence, glass splintering, metal screeching. She bolted toward the sound, her mop clattering, and found her supply room trashed, bleach bottles smashed, brooms snapped, and "Know your place, bitch" scrawled in black paint across the wall. Her breath caught, a jagged shard of fear slicing through her gut. Fuckers, she thought, fists clenched so tight her nails drew blood. This wasn't random, this was a goddamn declaration of war. Word hit the next day, a clique of rich-ass parents, led by a Botox hag named Cynthia Reynolds, had lost their shit over the janitor upstaging their precious brats. They'd staged the break-in, their manicured claws dripping with spite, and now they were gunning for her head. By lunch, rumors swirled. Reynolds had dug up the old Columbia cheating lie, twisting it into a venomous smear. "She's a fraud," she'd shrieked at a PTA meeting, her voice a banshee wail, waving a forged document like a fucking trophy. Maya overheard it from the hall, her mop frozen mid-swipe, her chest caving in. Not again, she thought, the past roaring back like a tidal wave, Dean Hargrove's sneer, her parents' tears, all that pain clawing her open. The school split like a fault line. Kids rallied, Jordan and his debate crew stormed the principal's office, shouting, "She's the realest damn thing here." But the damage spread fast. Graffiti bloomed overnight, "Liar" on the gym wall, "Fake" on her cart. Her locker got hit again, red paint this time, dripping like blood. Maya scrubbed it off, her arms shaking, her mind a screaming mess. "I beat their game," she raged silently, "and they still wanna bury me." Anderson, of all people, stepped up, his apology had stuck, and now he was in her corner, his voice hoarse as he told a class, "She's worth 10 of me, you little shits, listen up." It was a lifeline, but it couldn't stop the tide. The breaking point came at a school board meeting, the room a circus of suits and sneers. Reynolds strutted in, her pearls gleaming, and dropped the bomb. She'd bribed a board member to push for Maya's firing. "She's a disgrace," she crowed, her eyes glinting with triumph. Maya stood in the back, her uniform stained, her heart pounding like a jackhammer. She wanted to scream, to smash that smug face, but her legs locked, fear, exhaustion, the weight of decades pinning her down. Then Jordan burst through the crowd, his voice a raw, furious roar, "You're the disgrace, you fucking vulture. My grandma's more real than all of you." The room gasped, chairs scraping, and his words hit her like a thunderbolt. Tears burned her eyes, but she straightened, her spine steel. The kids erupted, cheers, stomps, a wave of defiance drowning Reynolds' shrieks. The board member balked, the petition hit 1,000 signatures, and the smear campaign cracked under the pressure. Maya's breath steadied, her fists unclenching. "They're fighting for me," she realized, a wild, ragged hope flaring in her chest. The school wasn't hers yet, hate still lurked, a snake in the grass, but she'd sparked something unstoppable. "You assholes picked the wrong battle," she muttered, a grim smile tugging her lips. She'd clean up their mess tomorrow, but tonight, she'd won, and she'd be damned if they forgot it. The Jefferson High chaos had barely settled when Maya Johnson's story detonated beyond the school's peeling walls, a goddamn wildfire scorching everything in its path. Local news vans swarmed the parking lot, their cameras glinting like vultures' eyes, and her face, lined, fierce, unyielding, flashed across every TV screen in town. "Janitor stuns school with math genius," the headline screamed, and strangers started nodding at her in the grocery store, their "You're that lady," a mix of awe and intrusion that made her skin crawl. She'd wanted respect, not a fucking spotlight, but the world didn't give a shit about what she wanted, it was coming for her, ready or not. Back at school, the air buzzed with a new edge. Jordan strutted the halls, his debate team jacket slung proud, fielding whispers of, "Your grandma's a legend," like a champ. The Maya Johnson Math Wing petition hit the news, and Mr. Anderson, still licking his wounds, started a tutoring club in her name, muttering, "She's the real deal, you little shits, learn something." But the glow was a double-edged sword. Cynthia Reynolds and her posse of pearl-clutching assholes hadn't backed off, they'd gone nuclear, leaking the Columbia smear to a tabloid that ran it with a sneering headline, "Fraud or Freak?" Janitor's past unraveled. Maya saw it at the gas station, the paper trembling in her hands, and her stomach dropped like a stone. Those bastards won't quit, she thought, rage boiling so hot she nearly smashed the pump. Then came the call that flipped her world upside down. A slick voice from the National Education Conference invited her to speak, keynote, big stage, thousands watching. "You're a symbol, Mrs. Johnson," the guy gushed, "a fucking inspiration." She hung up, her heart slamming against her ribs, and sank onto her sagging couch. The mop in the corner mocked her, a relic of the life she'd known, while Jordan burst in, eyes blazing. "You gotta do it, Grandma," he pleaded, voice cracking with urgency. "Show these fuckers what you're made of, show the world." His faith was a lifeline, but it dragged her back to Columbia's gates, the dean's snarl echoing, "You don't belong." She'd lost everything under eyes like those, could she survive it again? The conference loomed, a glitzy hotel ballroom packed with suits and applause, the stage lights blinding as Maya stepped up. Her uniform was gone, swapped for a borrowed dress that pinched her ribs, but she felt naked anyway, exposed, raw, a deer in a hunter's scope. The crowd hushed, a sea of faces waiting to judge, and her throat seized. "Fuck this," she thought, palms sweating, ready to bolt. But Jordan's grin from the front row anchored her, and she gripped the mic, her voice a low growl that built into a roar. "I didn't fight for me," she said, each word a hammer strike. "I fought for every kid told they're trash, every soul crushed by assholes who think skin or a job defines you. I'm here to say they're wrong, dead fucking wrong." The room erupted, a tidal wave of cheers, and the host rushed up, beaming, thrusting a gleaming beacon of change award at her, $50,000 gleaming in its shadow. "You've earned this," he crowed, the crowd on its feet, roaring like a goddamn thunderstorm. Maya stared at the trophy, her chest tight, the weight of every mop she'd swung, every slur she'd swallowed, crashing down. She could take it, cash out, bask in the glory, but something snapped. She shoved the mic back, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. "Keep your damn award," she barked, eyes blazing. "I didn't bleed for gold or some shiny bullshit, I did it so no one else has to beg for what's theirs by right." Gasps ricocheted, the host's jaw dropped, and Jordan hooped, fists pumping, as the crowd reeled. She stormed off, legs shaking, the applause a deafening echo in her ears. Backstage, she slumped against a wall, breath ragged, tears burning. "I'm done hiding," she thought, a wild, fierce joy clawing through the fear. She'd turned their game upside down, flipped the script on every bastard who tried to break her. The world would talk, but she didn't give a fuck, she'd spoken her truth, and it was louder than any prize. Jordan found her, hugging her tight, and she knew, this was her win, raw and real, and no one could take it away. The dust had barely settled from Maya Johnson's earth-shaking rejection of the Beacon of Change award when Jefferson High transformed into a goddamn shrine to her name. The morning after the conference, she trudged back to her mop, the familiar bleach stink curling up her nose, but the halls felt different, alive, electric, like a storm had ripped through and left something fierce in its wake. Kids didn't just nod now, they stopped her, eyes wide, stammering, "You're a fucking legend, Mrs. J." Jordan strutted beside her, his debate jacket slung proud, whispering, "They're naming a scholarship after you, Grandma, full ride, your name in lights." She grunted, "Better not fuck it up, kid," but her chest swelled, a raw, ragged pride she couldn't shake. The school was a battlefield reborn. The Maya Johnson Math Wing got the green light, its plaque gleaming like a middle finger to every asshole who doubted her. Mr. Anderson, his silver hair dulled by shame, led anti-racism workshops, his voice cracking as he told a packed gym, I was a prick, she showed me what real guts look like. Teachers who'd once ignored her now slipped her coffee in the lounge, their "you're one of us," a quiet plea for forgiveness. But the victory tasted bittersweet. Slurs still slipped into her locker, "freak" scratched in blue ink, a venomous reminder that hate didn't die easy. She scrubbed them off, her hands trembling, her mind snarling, "You bastards can't let it go, can you?" Beyond Jefferson, her story hit like a goddamn tsunami. Other schools snatched up her tale, plastering it on posters, "Maya Johnson, the janitor who broke the mold." Community centers held "respect days" in her honor, kids clutching crayons to draw her in her uniform, a superhero with a mop. The news wouldn't shut up, reporters camped outside her tiny apartment, their "tell us more" relentless buzz that made her slam the blinds shut. I didn't ask for this shit, she thought, her heart pounding, the weight of their eyes a noose tightening around her neck. Jordan laughed it off, "You're famous, Grandma," but she saw the strain in his grin, he was growing up too fast, carrying her fight on his shoulders. The real gut punch came one rainy afternoon. She was sweeping the gym when Principal Williams cornered her, his suit soaked, his voice urgent. "Maya, the governor's office called, they want you at the state capitol, a medal, a speech, the works." Her mop froze, her breath hitching. Another fucking stage. The conference had nearly broken her, those lights, those cheers, and now they wanted more. She shook her head, rasping, "I'm done, Williams, I'm no damn hero." He pressed, "You're changing lives," but she saw Columbia's gates in his eyes, the dean's sneer, and her stomach twisted. "Lives don't need me, they need to fix their own shit," she snapped, turning away, her hands shaking with a fear she couldn't name. That night, alone in her cramped kitchen, she found Jordan's latest math test, perfect score, her tutoring scrawled in the margins. A tear slipped down her cheek, hot and heavy, and she clutched the paper like a lifeline. This is it, she thought, the fight's true cost crashing over her. She'd cracked the world open for him, for every kid like him, but the scars, those slurs, those cameras, cut deeper than she'd admit. She shuffled to the mirror, her reflection a warrior's, gray hair a crown, eyes blazing. "You did it, you tough old bitch," she whispered, a grim smile tugging her lips. She wasn't just a janitor anymore, she was a fucking force, a ghost haunting every prejudice she'd torched. The next day, she mopped on, the routine a quiet rebellion. Kids waved, Anderson nodded, respect now, real and hard one, but a note slipped under her closet door, "You'll never belong." Her jaw clenched, rage flaring, but she crushed it in her fist. "They can kiss my ass," she thought, tossing it in the trash. Jordan aced another test, his "thanks, Grandma," a soft bomb, and she knew, her legacy wasn't the plaques or the headlines. It was him, thriving, free, a spark she'd lit in a world still half dark. She'd won her war, but the bittersweet truth lingered, peace came with a price, and she'd paid it in blood and grit.